Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence Directorate, ISI, is probably one of the better-known intelligence agencies in the Global South. Its role became particularly significant on the world stage after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, which ushered in a new period of violent strategic politics in the region once at the heart of the great game between colonial Britain and Russia. During that period of international tension and conflict, which eventually led to the end of the Cold War, the ISI suddenly found itself driving the mobilization of resistance against the Soviet incursion. As far as the history books can tell us, the agency was hugely successful in this endeavor through a strategy of standing up and coordinating the Mujahideen organization. Since this time, whether by design or accident, the ISI has cloaked itself in an almost mythical status of brutal effectiveness. This extends not only to operations abroad, and notably those directed at India, but also to internal repression in such regions as Baluchistan province and the general repression of dissent against the country's military leadership. Like all covert agencies, there is perhaps merit in developing an opaque aura of greatness that may well belie more modest capabilities in reality. At the same time, in the West especially, the agency has also taken on a reputation of duplicity and raw Machiavellianism, in which the usefulness of its effectiveness as an intelligence partner has to be balanced with a sometimes distinct lack of trust. In this book, I look at the development of the ISI from the birth of Pakistan in August 1947 to the reinstatement of the Taliban in Afghanistan in 2021. As far as possible, I attempt to scratch below the surface of myth and hyperbole to establish as true a picture of this particular intelligence agency as can be found. This, of course, is a complex challenge, perhaps especially so in the South Asian information environment in which myth and conspiracy theories are virulent elements of daily discourse. This factor means that some of the assessments necessarily must be presented as hypotheses and possibilities rather than certainties. Probably the most pivotal recent event in which such a consideration applies is the question of whether the ISI was fully aware that Osama bin Laden had been living in Pakistan, and indeed under the nose of an army base in the north of the country, before the United States undertook a unilateral operation to neutralize him in May 2011. In this analysis, I suggest that some in the ISI's hierarchy must have known. It is inconceivable they did not, but this does not necessarily mean the top leaders were fully cognizant of developments. In this can be found a key structural consideration in the composition and internal workings of the ISI, which is perhaps both a flaw in its character and a useful device for disavowing some of its darker activities. I suggest that establishing the full truth, however, is probably impossible.